Welcome to the Tom Azelby Show here in Philadelphia on 1210 WPHT every Saturday from 8 to 9. You can listen on Odyssey, iHeart, stream on YouTube. If you want to call in and talk with me, 855-839-1210. Now, what I am very interested in is my next guest. His name is Elliot Ackerman. I'm bringing him on at 8:15. He's a best-selling author. He's a novelist. He writes for The Atlantic. He writes for the Free Press, which I like. I have other guests on from the Free Press. It's not like a hard write. It's kind of an interesting cultural, political, kind of runs the middle, has interesting, but I think they have a good understanding how the left has lost their mind. The Atlantic definitely leans left. But Elliot Ackerman, he wrote in the Free Press about the cynical coverage of the conditions on the USS Abraham Lincoln. That's an aircraft carrier. It's been deployed a very long time. 7 months is standard at war. They've been out there 9 months, but the press has gotten a hold of it, and they're using it to beat Donald Trump over the head, and the Republicans, Pete Hegseth, everybody, us, everyone. So this is a big story for them. So Elliot Ackerman wrote an interesting article. And then what I like to do when I find a guest, if I see an article I like and I want to talk about it, which we're going to do in the show, I like to know the source who wrote it. I thought it was interesting. He writes for The Atlantic. And I was like, wow, that was an interesting perspective from a writer who writes for I'm forgetting The Atlantic. It caught my attention, but I always like to know the source. I like to read who the source is, like what's their experience in life. That's how I dig into someone. And what I found out about him, very interesting. He had an interesting background. His dad was a very wealthy Wall Street person. He grew up in England. He was a skate rat. Came back at 15. He went to England because his dad probably ran the finance desk over there for one of the big Wall Street firms. His father's got a whole interesting background too. But he would then go on to come home, go to the Georgetown Day School. That is a very Georgetown Day School, then to Tufts. Both of these places are ecosystems of the left, okay? But that's where he went to school. But when he's up at Tufts, he becomes ROTC for Navy. The bottom line is he would join the Marine Corps, become a lieutenant, and he would win the Silver Star, the Bronze Star, and a Purple Heart. That's an interesting resume. Most people I bring on just because of the article, but when I dug into him, I'm saying, wow, this is an interesting resume. He's written a best-selling novel. He's a writer. That's what he is. He's a reporter, and he writes novels, military novels, that bring in a lot of real life type of situations. And obviously he has an understanding. And let me tell you, winning the Silver Star in Fallujah, where they were going door to door, that's why I became very interested, not only in his article, but in him. And Elliot is going to be joining us at 8:15. Welcome back to the Tom Azelby Show here every Saturday from 8 to 9 on Philadelphia 1210 WPHT. Well, I told you I was bringing on Elliot Ackerman about an article he wrote, The Cynical Coverage of Conditions on the USS Abraham Lincoln. And I read the article and I said, I'd like to have that writer, that journalist on as a guest. But then what I like to do is find out a little bit more about my guest. So I dug into Elliot's resume, and wow, I was quite surprised. His father was a big Wall Street executive. He's a great story in himself at Drexel Burnham Lambert. And Elliot spent his childhood in England. I believe he was a skate rat over there. Then he returns to the Georgetown Day School, goes to Tufts. These are very places where what I found interesting is he went Navy ROTC. These ecosystems, Georgetown Day School and Tufts, definitely places of the left, I would say the ecosystem is. And here he is at both these schools, and he decides to become a naval officer, then a Marine. He will then go on to do 5 tours in Iraq and I believe in Afghanistan. He would not only win he would win the Silver Star, which in Fallujah of all places, a Bronze Star, and a Purple Heart, doing 5 tours. He's also when I started, he's a New York Times bestseller. He's written books that kind of they have like war themes, military themes. Some go out into the future. He wrote one with Admiral James Stavridis, very well-known admiral. So he's got, and I'll give you his books and I'll put it in the write-up after the show. But he's a New York Times bestseller list. So from seeing one article he wrote, I'm like, wow, I got to get this Elliot Ackerman on my show. Elliot, welcome to the Tom Azelby Show.
Thanks a lot for having me on, Tom, and I appreciate that intro.
Yeah, I want to make sure, sometimes you do this research online and they can send you in a bad direction. Did I miss anything in that introduction, or do you need to add anything? Because it's quite a resume.
No, nothing is. I'd say I'm a very proud skateboarder. So skate ride, I'm very proud of it.
I get it. And the reason I had felt the liberty, I referred as a skate rat. I was in that business in the 80s and 90s making apparel for the skate and surf industry. And no one minded the term skate rat, especially if you were a skate rat. So I thought I'd add that in because it says something about you. And I'm sure you learned a lot from living in that skating community, and some of the stuff you guys perform is unbelievable. But the ecosystem that you went into, with the Georgetown Day School and Tufts, how was it becoming, and we're going to get to the article in a minute, and I'm going to cover a little bit more of your life, but how you went from that type of environment to doing ROTC. What inspired you to do that at Tufts?
Well, I was, much younger, and I wanted a job, or whether I was good at my job or bad at my job mattered. So I guess, in other words, I wanted a lot of responsibility at a young age. And I think one of the things our military does is it trusts young people to have that type of responsibility. So when I was 24 years old as a Marine, second lieutenant in the infantry, and I was in charge of 46 people. And that was, an incredible honor and opportunities. So I think I just was craving that and saw the opportunity for it and decided it was something I wanted to do.
And I'm glad that you explained that. I'm going to circle back because I want to ask you more beyond the article you wrote. I have other questions just because I found, like I said before, I found your resume very interesting. But you're a good person to speak on the title of your article, The Cynical Coverage of the Conditions on the USS Abraham Lincoln. It's gotten very political. So I read that article, and everything in today's environment is a political war. That's just the way it is, and I accept that. But what's your overall take on it? And if you could just break down that article for the listeners.
Sure. I think, the article and kind of the controversy around the Abraham Lincoln, much of it was hinged on when it was leaked that there was a suicide attempt off the carrier. And then immediately their deployment became a political football. But the reality is for decades, across multiple administrations, Republican and Democrat, military suicide and veteran suicide has been a really tough issue. More than 500 active duty service members kill themselves on average every year, and that number skyrockets when you look at the veterans community. So the fact that the broader media at this point was choosing to focus on veteran suicide and the suicide attempt of a single service member to sort of score political points, to me just seems vulgar, and we shouldn't do that. We're better than that.
Yeah, they tried to position it, and I read that statistic that you said. How many active duty take their lives a year? Is it close to 500, did you say?
It's around, it obviously varies year to year, but it's about 500, and this has been going on, again, across Republican and Democratic administrations for years.
Right. So I what they tried to do is to make, the press where the narrative was this was an outlier for something like this to happen on that ship.
Absolutely. And, and it's sort of reminding you, like, Tom, you're saying at the beginning of the segment, like I went to Georgetown Day School or to Tufts University, which are definitely viewed as sort of very left-leaning institutions today. But when I went there, they were certainly institutions that sort of leaned a little bit left, but we lived in a society that wasn't as radically politicized as everything is today. Every part of our lives is political. And I don't know how we do it, but I think we're better as a society when we cannot look at things, at every little thing through a political lens, and can kind of just look at it as, one people, the American people, and everything doesn't have to be about scoring political points.
Yeah, no, it is frustrating. And you know what, Elliot, I agree. I went to a very kind of liberal arts college. My brothers did. But there wasn't, you just described it. It was a different climate back then. And I'm older than you, and it was probably even more different when I went there. But everything is political. But it's kind of like, and you would know this as a warrior, it's kind of like that's where the fight is. It's hard to avoid it. How do you avoid it? Meaning, like, it's like you're in the bar and everyone's like, we're going. I find it so hard to avoid the conflict.
I think it's extremely difficult. And if I had a 90-second answer for you on how we fix all of our political problems in the U.S. and get rid of this, hyper partisanship, I'd probably be going out trying to affect that change. I think in my small universe that I can control, I'll write about it. And, I think the media can help and members of the media can do their job. And I think our job in the media is to do our best to kind of call, to be an honest referee, call balls and strikes. And when we don't do that, we don't serve the American people well, and we don't serve our industry and the media well.
And you're right. And what I would advise people, it's your own personal responsibility so when you can to avoid it, you avoid it. So, and I do encourage that because I was saying earlier in the show, the negativity, even within whatever side you're on, even the negativity and the fighting within each group is now getting out of control. Meaning, like, it's not even against the other side. It's all internal. But here's something I wanted to bring up because I think your article hit on this. Kristen Holmes from CNN, they're having an event at the White House, at the Trump White House, and they got the kid that everyone saw the video of, the 16-year-old, the lifeguard. He rescues the 10-year-old, and he hangs on to the kid, and it's a great story. At that point, Kristen Holmes of CNN, and I thought this might be common for them, no matter what's going on, whatever the presentation is, the news can always just throw different questions. But historically, that doesn't happen on these feel-good events. But Kristen Holmes from CNN, threw that, what happened on the Abraham Lincoln, she threw that right into the middle of that with the 16-year-old and the 10-year-old. And I would think that's a little bit, when we talk about her as a reporter, a little personal responsibility there. And I would say that for a Republican too. Like, people got to discipline themselves a little bit with this.
I think that's right. And I think, I really like what you said. I think it comes down to just our individual relationships. Next time you're sitting at the dinner table or, you bump into an old friend and you start talking about whatever you're talking about and politics comes up. And I think we've all probably been there where we can feel like, oh, okay, I probably disagree with this person about X, Y, or Z. Do you really want to have that fight? And what are you going to get from that fight? And you can't in this world, can't reasonable people disagree about things. And I think they certainly can. But too often in our politics, what we do is we sort of turn the person across the table from us into, the other. And when we treat them that way and we need to win the argument for whatever reason, we kind of take away a little bit of their humanity. And so I agree. I think the first place it starts is on a personal level.
Hey, Elliot, with that, if you don't mind, I'd really like to hold you on through the break. Will you come back on with me? We'll go to break for a few minutes. We'll come right back. I got a lot of questions for you.
Sure thing. My pleasure.
Okay, we'll go to break. We'll be back with Elliot Ackerman, Silver Star winner, United States Marine Corps. We'll be back. Welcome back to 1210 WPHT. This is Tom Azelby. I'm with Elliot Ackerman. He's a best-selling author. He's a Silver Star winner. He was a Marine lieutenant in Fallujah. He did 5 tours, and it's an honor to have him. Elliot, I'm going to move off the Abraham Lincoln, but one thing is for sure, this was a very long deployment for that aircraft carrier, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, they've been at sea now for more than 270 days. And I think, and without, the typical port calls that kind of, get you breaks during a deployment. And, one of the reasons for that is just given the threat in the area, threat of, drones and Iranian missiles, they've been unable to pull into the normal ports where they would. But yes, definitely a long deployment.
So would you, what perspective with your experience in the military, do you think these are a few squeaky wheels, or do you think this has got like a mutiny mentality out on that ship? How would you frame it? Like kind of what the sailors are feeling? Is it just a few disgruntled people who are talking to their parents online? What would be your take on that?
Well, obviously, I mean, it's difficult to say. I'm not on the Lincoln and don't have any great insight. But you typically, these things kind of seem to probably be somewhere. The truth exists somewhere in the middle. That there's, I'd say, probably a vocal contingent of folks on the Lincoln who are upset, who are talking to family members, and there's media that's eager to amplify that story. But it doesn't mean that parts of it aren't true or rooted in truth. Yeah. That it's been a very, very long deployment. It's tough to resupply these ships sometimes. In those conditions, it's tough to have the type of fruits and vegetables and higher standards of living that you would want on a deployment that long, and that the crew and the leadership are doing their best under a difficult situation, and that's war.
Yeah, I was going to say, being in the military, especially in a combat zone, that no one knows it better than you. That's a grind, and it comes with a lot of discomfort. But I would think this too. You were an officer in the Marine Corps with modern technology, social media. I mean, that's a whole new level of management for officers, don't you think?
Absolutely, and I'm in many ways sort of grateful that my time in the Marine Corps sort of ended just as everyone was really coming online with social media. I mean, I left in 2011, but I think these days service members are connected even more than before, and I think that poses just challenges, challenges to just everybody being on the same sheet of music as to sort of what's going on and what the truth is. So I think that is, that's something the leadership has to contend with.
Yeah, it's a modern day challenge, no doubt about it. So I want to go, you did 5 tours. If you can, where were your 5 tours?
They were all in Iraq and Afghanistan between 2004 and 2011.
And, the Fallujah fighting, from, what I've read in books, and I was kind of fascinated with that mission. And that's where you won your Silver Star. If you don't mind, but share winning the Silver Star. I mean, that's a real big deal, as you know. How'd you win the Silver Star?
Well, I think one of the things that's complicated about Valor Awards, and I've written up many people for similar Valor Awards who receive them, is they only hand out those medals when things don't go according to plan. So many times you're being honored for something that could in some ways also be one of the worst days of your life. So in my case, I earned the Silver Star on a day during the Fallujah battle where our platoon basically got surrounded in a building. We had a number of wounded that day, and I had to evacuate some of the wounded, and wound up manning a machine gun on the rooftop of that building for a little while.
How long were you how long did that last? That kind of intense kind of firefight that you were in?
We were. The most intense fighting in Fallujah occurred over the first week of the assault, but the battle continued for a month, and there was fighting throughout that month. So all in that battle lasted about a month.
And the 5 tours, what tour did you win the Silver Star in?
It was actually my first. No, it was my first deployment. So as a new lieutenant, so I checked into my unit in April, and I was in Iraq in June, and that battle happened in November. So it was sort of sink or swim on the job training when I showed up in the Marine Corps.
And it did the Bronze Star and the Purple Heart, those other commendations you got, did they all come from that one day, or were they for different missions that you were on?
I earned a Purple Heart a few days after the incident around the Silver Star, which was also in Fallujah. And the Bronze Star I earned was in Afghanistan several years later in 2008.
Well, I'll say this. I appreciate you sharing it with me, and I can understand that's probably what you probably like to talk about everything else, but that. But I think it's I think people like to hear, like, you know, how you win a Silver Star, what went on, and you gave them some feedback on that. So I really appreciate it. Now I want to I want to start reading your books, quite frankly.
Thank you.
I want to give you a minute to talk about how you're a New York Times bestseller. Tell us about that book you wrote with the Admiral.
Oh, well, Admiral Jim Stavridis and I, he was he retired out of the military, and his last job was as the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe, which is basically the military officer who heads NATO. And he and I actually had known each other before, and we had a shared editor, and he wanted to write a book. He was interested in writing a book that would imagine what it would be like if the U.S. and China went to war. And he and I teamed up to write that book and turn into a trilogy of books. So the first book was called 2034, which is about what would happen if the U.S. and China went to war. And the second book was 2054, and the last one, which came out this summer, was 2084. And each of the books imagines a singular challenge sort of facing humanity in this coming century. So peer-level war in the first book. The second book is about the rise of artificial intelligence and how it affects our democracy. And the last book, 2084, is about changes in geography and the way artificial intelligence will affect warfare in the distant future. So, you know, we have had a lot of fun. It's been a more than, I guess, a 7-year project of us writing these books, and they're all works of speculative fiction. You know, imagining these great challenges so that hopefully we can avoid them.
It sounds like two guys with with solid military backgrounds are wargaming what might happen. So what you're discussing is not some fiction. It's not Stephen King writing it. You were two military officers that are saying, this is how we would see it if it happened. That makes for an interesting book.
It is, you know, it's really us, trying to war game that out. The books are rooted in our, you know, experience and our understanding of warfare, and they're kind of also rooted in this tradition. You know, if we look back, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, there was this very rich tradition of Cold War literature and movies about, you know, what it would look like if the U.S. and Soviet Union ever went to war. And those stories, in many ways, were kind of, they protected us because we were imagining how horrible the nuclear war would be. It actually helped us avoid it. And so I think with these books, we're looking at challenges that we're all facing in this coming century, and telling the stories around those challenges is a way to sort of avoid the worst outcome.
Elliot Ackerman, I want to thank you for coming on, and I'd go out and buy these books. Sounds like that's 2084, 2034, Sheepdogs. This is good stuff, written by former military people with plenty of knowledge. Elliot Ackerman, thank you for coming on the Tom Azelby Show. We'll be right back.